Justin Marks, NASCAR driver, NASCAR race winner, sprint car team owner, Daytona 24-hour winner. If you could describe this dinner with racers in one word, what would it be?
It would be
What?
like
one word.
Hey, one
Word.
One word.
And
One
also,
word.
I'll tell you, guys
No,
like
Justin. Okay,
that
that's
ruin
okay.
the sport for everybody.
Wow.
Okay.
Are you good?
I'm good. Transcendence.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
Go.
Welcome to Dinner with Racers. I'm Ryan Eversley alongside my co-host and best friend, Sean Heckman.
Friend.
Ah.
I'm fine with friend.
All right. Anyways, along our 12,000-mile odyssey across the country.
By the way, it's not just an Odyssey.
It's a Honda Odyssey.
Honda Odyssey. On what tires?
Continental Tires.
Cross contact, LX20.
Oh, do I need to do the voice?
No, that's fine.
Well, I'm not doing it this time.
All right.
So we got to Mooresville, North Carolina. Got to meet up with a lot of our friends in the NASCAR side of the world, one of which included Justin Marks. Justin's coming off the Xfinity road race win at Mid-Ohio earlier this year, driving the number 42 Chevrolet for Ganassi Racing, and couldn't be a cooler guy. If you ever get a chance to say hi to him at a racetrack, he'll give you all the time in the world. Absolutely good dude. And one of the unique things about Justin is that he had the privilege of coming up as a funded driver, and he talks a lot about his background in that, as well as making the crossover from funded driver to paid race car driver.
And one of the reasons that Ryan and I both really wanted to talk to him is that you do meet a lot of funded drivers coming up in the sort of worlds that we're in. And Justin's one of those guys who you'd never know it because he doesn't carry himself in any sort of special way that makes you want to dislike him.
Right.
And he's always been one of the most real and genuine people you could meet in the sport.
One of the things we talked about was how he and I kind of got to know each other. I didn't really like the guy at first, and he didn't know that, so that came to light. He talked about racing drunk, as well as just the business side of the world of motorsport and what he thinks he could do, or what we could all do to help change it and go in a better direction.
Now, Justin owns several businesses that are involved in sort of the motorsport world. He's very active in karting. Most notably, for those who follow anybody in NASCAR, knows that he is the owner of the GoPro Motorplex in North Carolina, which is a karting track that a lot of people in that area come out and have their fun to. There's those Wednesday night races that are always happening among the NASCAR guys. And we learned one very key thing about that.
We found out who the worst driver on the rental carts is.
Exactly.
And I think you'll like to tweet him and let him know when you find out.
So, without any further ado, let's learn more about the great Justin Marks.
Continental Tire! Yeah, I did it, see?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hi. Hi. I've only got audio out of my right ear. Is that normal?
Are we going to complain this early?
Huh?
Are
I'm
you
not
complaining
complaining. I'm
already?
just
Hey,
stating
welcome to
fact.
my
Wow,
whole life.
somebody's already a
Welcome to my
driver.
whole life.
Yeah. Okay.
He's like, this isn't what I wanted.
This is a high dollar operation.
A little further away from your mouth.
Check.
No, that's closer.
How's that? Is that better?
That's good.
Dude, I listened to, so I've been kind of going back through Dinner with Racers, but I gotta tell you, dude, that level 5 one to me is just
good.
the best one.
So
and
good.
honestly, it just on a number of levels, like the content of the stories are obviously just so insane, and how Jeff tells it
Right.
is like the best part,
Yeah.
just because just how pragmatic he is, like just
Yeah.
how. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, he was like loving the fact that we thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
So he just kept going. He's like,
all good.
oh, well, if you like that, you'll like this.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
like, what? Yeah, we were like messaging each other while it was
Yeah.
happening. So it was like, dude, this is amazing. Yeah. It was
I
cool.
could see how. I mean, I think that he understands. Obviously, he understands how ridiculous of a thing it was.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was probably for a lot of people like you almost couldn't. You probably got so lost in the details, or like
Yeah.
in what the the goals, the objectives were. It's almost like you couldn't see the forest from the trees, and like you almost had to be a couple years removed from it, look back on it, and just go,
Yeah.
What the hell?
that was the most
What the
ridiculous
hell?
thing
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. And we knew nothing about that story
Yeah.
when we came in. So we're just
Oh, really?
every element. We didn't prompt it. He just sort of brought it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
See, he
Yeah.
told us a little bit about it when he was our Andy and I's engineer at TRG.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So
Okay.
he sort of told us a little bit about it. I knew it was ridiculous. I didn't know it was that to that level.
Stupid.
Just stupid.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
So that's our most downloaded episode.
Is that right? The
No-
special?
No pressure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sell.
Now, here's what we haven't told anybody.
Cheers, brothers. Good to see you.
Cheers, man. Good to see you.
If you can top that, you get to take Bill Riley home.
He's like, I'll make some shit up.
I don't know if I can take that from you guys. It's a cornerstone of your social media initiative. Too.
It is.
We have another one.
Oh, damn. Okay. How come you look so f***ing miserable in all the Instagram pictures? I didn't notice it for like 4 or 5 of them. Then I'm like,
Yeah, that's my thing.
Travis doesn't look like he's having a very good time. Then I start going through it, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
I say, okay, there's a pattern.
So my favorite part about that is I don't get stopped per se, but every now and then somebody will come up to me at a track and be like, hey, can I get a photo with you? And it's like it's happened maybe 4 times
Yeah.
over the year. And so my follow-up is always, sure, do you want me in character? And they're always thrown off by what I'm saying. Like, I don't normally look like this.
I'm not just
you
angry.
know?
Outside.
So, and what's funny is every time I'm like, no, I guess not. And so then I just take a regular picture. I'm like, hold on, let's do it again. And then I do the face. And every time I'm like, oh, yeah, that one's better. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
people like me angry. So
How did the one with Joey go? Really?
No, he was great.
I was trying to remember. See, the thing is, like, so much. I try to remember stuff that's happened in my career and stuff with him, and it's like sometimes I wonder if I get if the details, if I mess up details because
Sure.
it's been
Oh,
10 years
yeah,
or it's
for
been
sure.
like
make it
whatever.
up.
But
just always go sensational.
Yeah.
It's the best way to go.
well, yeah,
Now, he went really well. It really helped having your preloaded questions.
yeah. So did he talk about almost trying to punch Mika Salo? Did he remember that?
Oh, he remembered that.
Okay, good. James Stevens had to hold him back in the Pirelli tent.
He,
We want
if
want your take on all the stories you told us to ask about.
Yeah.
Okay, but I was okay. Yeah, all right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he said
Specific
you
thing.
must
I
have
was-
watched that on TV or something.
No,
or-
I wasn't there. I was at the hauler when they got back.
Yeah, yeah.
Like James brought him back like in his arms, and,
Yeah.
and Joey was like just ready to just destroy the inside of the hauler.
What we learned is you don't touch Joey Hand's hat because apparently Salo like flicked his hat.
And you don't flip him off.
Right.
I don't know if he said that.
No, he
But he just
mainly
goes
was like
red.
he was like you don't touch this hat.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a hat, so we're
Yeah.
like, cool, we won't
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Joey's one of my favorite people in the whole world, and he's an incredible person and like my total brother. But he has got this like he's like 5% completely f***ing loony bin crazy.
The first time we met, he and I actually talked was at your wedding,
Really?
and I told him this on the air. But basically, we're like all going outside. I don't even remember. You remember this because you were probably worse off than I was. But there was like one of those tour buses to drive people around the resort.
Yeah.
And it's like McDowell, Alley, me,
Yeah.
you. We're all trying to hotwire it.
Yeah.
Not really,
I
but
don't
we're
remember
trying.
it,
Yeah. You're like, yeah, no clue. But anyways, Joey and I kind of like turn a corner and say something to each other, and he like looks at you. He's like, "Who's this guy?" And you're like, "It's Eversley." And he's like, "Oh, hey man, how's it going?" But he was like ready to kill, like immediately.
He
like,
just has this.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I'm at the wedding. I'm probably okay.
Yeah. Like he's invited, man. Relax. It's cool.
Right.
Yeah. There's a great story. This is a story. For some reason, I don't know when guys get this. Some of our greatest stories are how bad somebody had to take a at some point. Right. Somewhere.
There's a lot of that involved.
Are we? Is it? Should we start this thing?
Oh yeah, we should start. Ready?
Okay, so back to shit.
Okay.
Do you need a fancy intro? I'll just cut
No.
it back out.
No. I figured you.
Just
you-
delete it later.
Yeah.
It's fine. Next to the stage.
No, we did. My wife tells this story. I tell this story to my wife, and she cries. She thinks it's so funny, but just because she knows me. But we're leaving Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey, for the BMW to visit BMW North America. It's me and Joey Hand and Brian Sellers, and so we go to the headquarters like a week before, or a couple days before we have to be at Lime Rock. And Lime Rock's a big one for BMW.
yeah.
And oh man, so we're leaving, and I don't know if I had some bad fish at the BMW place or something like that, but I'm starting to feel it,
not
and I'm
good.
starting to be in pain. And then all of a sudden, like, it's happening. Like right now, it's happening.
Right.
And I'm in the
In a
back,
loaded car.
back of this rental car, and we're in dead stop traffic on the toll plaza of the Tappan Zee Bridge,
Right.
Yes.
in New
Yeah,
Jersey.
no
Like, there's
escape.
nowhere to
No
go.
escape.
And I'm looking across like 6 lanes of dead stop traffic at like the woods, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a run for it, and then we'll just figure this out after, like whatever, because he
Circle back.
can't do anything.
Circle back.
Yeah. And Brian Sellers is just losing it in the front seat.
Like
And
dying
he's,
laughing.
He's like crying.
Yeah,
like he thinks it's a funny. And I'm in like the fetal and I'm shaking and like
Right.
the whole deal. But I made it across the bridge and got to like this Chevron station on the other side. But it was just like sitting in that traffic right there. It was just those guys were like, I seriously want to kill. Like, it's so bad it gets to that point where you're like I could probably justifiably end my life right now. Like, be okay. Like, so I would do something horrible, right? And those guys just think it's the funniest thing.
They're
I'm
losing
like,
it.
put the spackle the inside of this rental car. It's not gonna be funny here in a minute. But anyway, I don't know if that's too much information, but.
All right, thanks for coming.
all right.
And that's the show.
Enjoy your dip.
Yeah.
It was a good dip.
Yeah, that is. So we ordered the Rob Kaufman queso and got this instead on accident.
No.
And it's pretty good. So it looks like cat food, but it's tasty. So Joey's side of the story was that they put some like bait fish or something because you guys went to Lanier for a day, and you didn't find
And they
the
hid
one.
some in your bag,
and,
and
like,
it stunk.
Yeah.
But you couldn't figure out where it was.
Well, we had these OGO bags.
Yeah.
They were OGO bags that had this is like when the backpack game was like just starting to really kick into high gear, right?
game. Sean,
And
you
there was,
know
like,
that game.
I do.
Hidden compartments and like
Fashion-forward guy.
yeah, huge iPod.
Right. Square with like
You
a
know,
plastic clear thing.
yeah. And he found a compartment in my backpack that I didn't know existed, and he filled it up with chicken liver catfish bait. And it honestly there were every time I would travel after that there'd be these moments, like I'm in the
Right.
plane,
Yeah.
or I'm in the rental car, and I'm just like, God, what is that? What is that? Or the hotel room,
And
or
it's
something
the
like
same
that.
smell that's following you
And
everywhere.
it's starting to screw with my head because I'm
Right.
like thinking I've got some sort of like halitosis
Right.
situation, or I'm
Right.
like
Skin
smelling my
disease,
skin.
yeah.
I'm like, what is happening? He's following me
Is
everywhere.
this a sign of a stroke?
I didn't find it for 6 or 7 months or something like that.
Wait, did it
Yeah, I
still
found it.
last 6 or 7 months?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think it's like sustainably farmed free range material. I think it's like pretty gnarly processed stuff. But yeah, it was pretty good. He thought that was funny too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of sort of being in a quote unquote different situation, I mean, one of the reasons we thought you'd be a really good fit for us is we haven't really had a guy like you on, so to speak. You know, somebody who kind of came young from money, and kind of had that quote unquote rich kid label put onto him when he entered the racing scene. And you've done an excellent job of first transcending that. I mean, the fact that you won a nationwide race on a road course in the fucking wet. Xfinity race.
What'd you say?
I said
Nationwide.
nationwide. I didn't even
Oh,
catch it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta keep sponsorship.
But yeah. But the fact that you're able to win on a road course in the wet against all those guys would say that you've definitely transcended that. But additionally, like at this point in your life, I think you've embraced kind of what you are and your place within the sport. And it's good to just have somebody freely talk about what the experience is like for somebody like you coming in.
Yeah, well, that's a very fair assessment. What you said. I mean, that's because it's absolutely the truth. I am at a point now in my career where I just like a couple years ago, I just went like, I'm not going to be.
Right.
I'm not going to try to hide this. I'm not going to try to like. I'm going to embrace it because I work really hard.
Well, when
you
we
know?
first met in 2009, I think it was 08 or 09.
Yeah, 09, yeah.
You were with TRG in the sports car side of the world. And, and all we were told was, like, treat Justin like he's a pro. Don't treat him like he's a guy bringing money, even though we're like, yeah, we know the deal, dude.
That's awesome.
And
My favorite part of putting that deal together with
Yeah.
Kevin Buckler was him saying, Andy Lally, your teammate, is available for some extra coaching if you want it. At that point, I'd raced like 4 years for BMW, doing NASCAR,
right.
whole kind of thing. He's like, he'll look at data with you and he'll all this kind of stuff. I'm like, Kevin, okay.
yeah, right. Okay. But my point is you were trying to downplay the gentleman driver aspect
Yeah.
of it. And I think today you're very different about it, just sort of getting this is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, I say I don't know what it is. I mean, I think a couple years ago I sort of went through this transition where I said, like I can't control what other people say about me. Like I can't, no matter how hard you work to try to make yourself look a certain way or be accepted a certain way in the sport, you're not going to change people's opinions of you.
Yeah.
So obviously I've been given essentially an unfair advantage in life, right? And being able to have some funding to be able to give me opportunities.
Right.
But I sort of always thought, it's not the opportunity or who gets the opportunity that
Right.
makes the difference. It's what you make of the opportunity,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And in this sport, in all honesty, in this sport, to be able to get these days to the top of the level, at some point you have had to have some sort of advantage. Maybe it wasn't money,
Right.
Maybe it was, it's connection, somebody you
Born
knew,
into
or it's
it,
like,
yeah,
it takes money for somebody to buy your first, go-kart or whatever.
Right,
I mean, it's
right.
like, I think Ryan, you've proven that you've worked really hard for a lot of your great opportunities, but you grew up in a racing family, and your father worked in racing for a long time. That gave you an opportunity to have a great example set for yourself. Like
that
right?
was
So
my advantage.
everybody has it, yeah. So for me, my whole thing was, all I want is the respect of my peers.
Right.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
I want to work hard enough at this, because I didn't grow up racing. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm winning races, I'm going to pursue this.
Right.
Like, no, I decided I was going to try to be a race car driver before I sat ever in anything.
Right.
Like when I was 17 years old, I was like playing NASCAR racing on the PC and watching the Winston Cup Series on TV, and I went, this looks really cool. This is what I want to try to do for my career. And I had never driven anything in my life.
Right.
So I don't know if you just say, here's somebody who just didn't really have any natural ability or talent, that was just going out there and just working really hard to try to make it happen.
Right.
So, so we've had some successes, right? I mean, I've won a lot of IMSA races and won the 24 Hours of Daytona, but those always had a little bit of an asterisk in my mind, because my teammates were Joey Hand and Bill Auberlin and Boris Said,
Right.
and 24 Hours of Daytona, it was, me sort of, them trying to find a couple hours of the race for me to drive between
Right.
double stints from Andy Lally and Bergmeister and Patrick Long, and my crew chief comes to me, when the sun comes up, and he's like, I'm going to try to get you in this car, and I'm like, we're fine here. Like,
Right.
I want to win this
Let's
race.
go
This
win
is
this,
awesome.
sure.
Like, just watching these guys do this thing. So a big watershed moment for me in my career was that race at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah.
Because, it just played right into my wheelhouse. Like, I've always been just a little bit behind everybody else. And I think it's just because I didn't really grow up doing it. I didn't,
Right.
so I just, natural ability plays a big role in this. And while I've always been good enough to put myself in a position, like be a decent first driver in an IMSA race, or,
Right.
put the car in a decent position for the pro to go do his thing. I've never truly carried the weight 100% on my shoulders on an equal playing field, but
Right.
but my niche, the type of racing that I felt like I am completely on an even playing field and I can compete with anybody, is in the rain.
Right.
For whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but I've just been confident in the rain. I've been comfortable in the rain, and I've worked really hard to be good in the rain. So, and especially for some reason in the stock cars especially. So that was like the perfect storm. So it was a very unique situation in the sport, but there's guys like Sam Hornish in the race and Ryan Blaney, and there's not like a lot of talent in the race, and Andy Lally, exactly. I mean, some guys with a lot of talent and experience and all that, and to win on that day was like, okay, I have now finally done something that I can say, like, I did that.
Right.
Like I did that,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
You're
so
the
it's like
only one in the
I needed to
car,
bring
it's
the
the way.
sponsorship to drive for Chip Ganassi Racing,
Sure.
and I needed to, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, in NASCAR, it's not like bringing Jeff Braun's DSR to the runoffs. I mean, like in NASCAR, like really, there are a lot of really good cars out there, and there's a lot of really good teams out there, and so yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing that made an impact on me when I was coming up in racing, seeing a lot of other kids sort of with the same opportunities that were just not taking it very seriously. We're all about the show. We're about the social media pictures. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to I'm going to return the favor to, the racing gods or the other gods or whatever it is that gave me this opportunity. I'm going to return the favor to them by working my ass off and trying to make something of this. So I've built some good businesses here in North Carolina, and I've been able to win it's some big races, and so yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's a good example I'm setting for my children, and so I don't know. It's a tough. There are just a lot of people out there that just need to just be a little happier. You know what I mean? Like, there's
No,
just
what
a
are you
lot
saying? Why are you looking at me?
I'm just saying there's like the people out there that want to tear other people down. It's just
Sure.
a really sad thing. I mean, it's just, life is.
Well, so like
It's
when you
just-
walk into the scene, because like, when you first come into the scene, I think back to like 09, and if you're a PR guy in a customer-driven team, you're one of 3 or 4 other well-to-do guys that are there that we kind of have to handhold. And thinking back to a year like 2009, there are some people we all know in common that, let's just say, when the group of us working go to dinner, we might make fun of those guys. You were never one of those guys that we made fun of, because you, one, treated everybody with respect, and you were just a regular guy, and you really played kind of the means you came from down. But kind of to go with that, you've since started businesses, you've done all those other things, but kind of coming from your side was what I've always wanted to know is, when you first start, you have to know how people are looking at you, right? Guys like us are like, oh, another asshole. Is that
I've never thought you were an asshole.
you're lying?
No,
You're
not lying
still
at all. I like you, Sean.
But like when a well-to-do, especially a young guy, like sometimes if a guy's in his 50s, you're like, oh well, he made his money, now he's going having fun. Good for him. But like a young guy, they kind of came from money. Is there any when you first just thinking for the fans at large listening to this kind of stuff, when you first walk in, is there any extra pressure or sort of a stigma you felt like you had to overcome when you walk in?
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt like I have to do more to get the same respect. Like you have to make a bigger impact
Right.
to have the same sort of reaction from the environment,
Sure.
right? So it's like you look at a guy like Paul Menard, right? Paul Menard, who raced for a long time, was very very dedicated to his career. Obviously, had a tremendous opportunity. He won races, made a chase. Ran really, really well for a long time, by all accounts. Like a very talented race car driver that belonged everywhere that he raced. The guy won the Brickyard 400, not on attrition, not on fuel mileage. Like he went out there and kicked everybody's ass to give his father his first ever win at the Brickyard. The guy has to win the Brickyard 400 and deliver John Menard his first win at the Speedway for anybody to say like, yeah, I mean, like maybe he did a pretty good job that day or something like that. I mean, and So I mean, I think going back to it, you have to do a little bit more to get the same, because that stigma is difficult to overcome. Right. And people find excuses for why you had some success.
Yeah.
Right. Because they don't want to accept that you got the opportunity because of your circumstances and you did a good job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Like you can't do both. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So why'd you hate him, Eversley?
I never said I hate Justin much.
Jesus.
When we first met, you were getting when was your first year racing?
Ever?
Yeah. Like you're doing like World
I was in
Challenge
World Challenge in 2001.
Yeah, that was my first year as a mechanic. And so you're like 18 or so?
Yeah, something
Because you're like a year or two older than me. So we're the same age, essentially, and you're showing up getting World Challenge rides, and I'm getting to turn wrenches for a living. And hopefully one day maybe something will come out of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like and this is more my problem than your problem. It wasn't just like that Justin Marks guy, like, I'm okay with this dude, but Justin, it was like any young guy getting to drive race cars when I wasn't. It just sucked, because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then, and you were good too. That was the next thing. It's like, rich kids getting big rides and he's good. And then the big kicker is when like friends of yours are like, that guy's awesome. Cause you're like, no, like he can't be a good dude, successful and come from a good circumstance. It's like, So the funny thing is we have another weird background, you and I, that your wife, Erin, and I went to high school together, coincidentally. Yeah. And we started seeing
the
like
sprawling metropolis of Winder,
Georgia. Right, yeah. So we started seeing like posts on Facebook. It would be like Justin and Aaron Peppers were at a restaurant in Lawrenceville or something. And I'm like, why was Justin Marks in Lawrenceville? And it's like not a race weekend. It doesn't add up.
Like, I can't shake this guy.
Yeah, I'm like, stop. Get out of my life, bro.
We didn't know it was all about you. It was all
it's my podcast,
ploy.
Sean.
Right.
So, no, and it didn't make any sense. And then, we're like, maybe they, like, Lally and I are trying to figure it out. Like, maybe they met at a petite party, because we used to have these huge parties at Lally's house where everybody, like, the house would be like a house party scene from a movie with 300 people or whatever. And eventually, like, you guys start dating, getting serious, and then now you're married with 2 kids. And I remember you would come down to from Charlotte with Erin, and she would stay at her parents' house. And then you would kind of go hang out with Sellers or something. And then, like, one weekend you came down and Sellers was out of town. So you, like, hit me and Lally up and we went out. And so we ended up having a good time. And then, like, 2 or 3 weeks later, like, randomly, it's like a Friday at 6 o'clock at night. We have the weekend off. And, like, someone's like, and I go to the front door, and it's Justin Marks with a case of PBR at our front door. And he's like, what's up? And I'm like, hey. And you're like, let's drink. And I was like, okay, this guy's cool. Like, he showed up with beer just to hang
Beer's
out.
the great equalizer.
He's cool.
Yeah.
But then we got to spend time together, and, like, you're just a dude. I'm a dude, and we both get to do cool shit. And that, I think, really just getting to know you, I knew you weren't, like, a douchebag like some other people we know in this world that are pretentious as hell, more so about the off-track stuff than the on-track stuff. And but what really opened my eyes to you was, like, all the things you do, like with the go-kart facility at GoPro Motorplex, the sprint car team, the K&N team, like all the things you're always working on. You're always, like, you go to real meetings. You deal with real businesses. that kind of thing, no one else in your position does.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot that you said that. I think a couple of things. My father came from very little, and everything he's gotten in his life, he's worked his ass off for that, and he's, I think, presented that as an example to my sister and I as we were growing up and coming up, that it was like, nothing was just sort of put on us, it was just, there was just a good example set. And I think that, regardless of what career you're in or where you came from or where you're going or anything like that, what ultimately makes a difference in this life is just how you treat people. And I think,
100%,
and I think that, and that the rest doesn't matter.
Well, and I would say, I agree with your statement that you have to work that much harder to sort of get the respect among your peers and whatnot, but it also shows how easy it is to get to be a normal guy. Like, all you had to do was show up with a case of beer and just want to hang out.
Just be yourself.
Yeah,
that's who you
and just
were.
be a guy, as opposed to not hanging out with the guys and then posting pictures on Instagram saying, my every day is better than your best vacation.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think that what, like, my wife, she sort of thinks I have like dad issues, and like what I mean by that is like everything my father, he did a great job, I think, raising two good people, and my sister and I, and people to understand that relationships are important, and being selfless is important, and giving as much as you can is important, and hard work is important. That's sort of the currency of success, is hard work. And, but he has been so successful and so admired, and I've been in the corner my whole life watching those accolades come raining down, that he casts a tremendous shadow.
Yeah.
And so I have this thing in my head where, like, everything that I want to do, I can't do it for anything less than like taking it to the absolute extreme, because it's like, and my wife tells me, and I think we talk about this, and I think that she's probably right, I am never going to be as successful or as intelligent in business as my father is. So I wonder if subconsciously there's a desire in my head to continue to try to do things that impress my father.
Right.
So like it's like I got a wild hair to do like a triathlon, so I signed up for an Ironman, right, and trained for 6 months, and then and then I wanted to do a long running race, and so I did like a 30-mile ultra marathon, and now it's like I want to go climbing so I want to go climb Mount Everest. And it's like everything is just to the maximum. And my wife is like, I don't understand why you can't just be happy running 5Ks or whatever. But we talk about it, and we're like, maybe that's what it is. Is like, no, I have to do things.
Right.
I have to work super, super hard to try to accomplish things that are difficult to do. And I think a lot of it just comes out of coming from that sort of environment.
Well, so on that, because your dad, from what I know, is not much of a racing guy, right?
No,
not at all. Right.
He thinks it's ridiculous.
And yet you have, but
he thinks it's like the world's worst.
He's
business.
right.
He thinks it's like the world's worst business. Well, the world's worst industry.
Is the smartest reporter.
But that's my point. It's like you've managed to build, not just like going out and having fun, but you've managed to build legitimate businesses out of the sport. GoPro Motorplex appears to be a fairly profitable venture. You're in the karting import-export business. You've got several little pockets in racing. Do you feel like your endeavors in racing, because all of them are fairly successful, that you can look back and go, that's mine.
Yeah.
I didn't use family connections to build this.
Yeah.
I mean, you had some capital to start.
Yeah.
But other than that, every business you've had has been 100% yours.
Yeah, I mean, the GoPro Motorplex is a great business, and
Right.
it was expensive to build, and we had to use family money to build it. But it is a profitable business. It's popular. People love it.
Right.
It makes money. It contributes to the industry here in Charlotte. It contributes to the region from an entertainment and tourism standpoint. Families have moved here with their kids from other parts of the country, so their kids can race at the GoPro Motorplex and pursue a career here in Charlotte, where all the NASCAR teams are.
Right.
I mean, that's unbelievable, right? You're creating an opportunity for people, and that's awesome. And we've got, Austin Cindric started racing go-karts at our place, and he's, now probably going to drive. I mean, I'm guessing he's going to drive that Penske Xfinity car next year. I don't know, but I mean, he's driving trucks, and he's doing all kinds of it. And we've got the PK kids, right? The Fittipaldi kids that are over there running I think he's in F3 or he's in or GP3 or something like that right now, and doing well. I mean, so that's awesome. On the import and distribution side, those businesses are really, really, really special to me, because we started those on cash generated from the other business or from debt that we took on from the local bank based on our
Right.
assets
It
on
wasn't
hand and everything
just
like that. And
family
we have
money
built
that you
a
put in.
great import and distribution business where we're capturing tons of market share. We're bringing new products to karting. We're breaking down barriers of entry as far as affordability. We're uniting the series nationwide. We're uniting the formats nationwide. We're really, really trying hard to do something to create a place where people can get involved in racing more affordably and more easily than they have in 15, 20 years.
Right.
It takes time, but that's something that's really, really cool because that can be a truly lasting impact in the industry, right? I mean, that can be there after I'm gone.
Business,
And so
but that's what I respect is that like, you know, your father, from what I understand, came from basically the Silicon Valley tech industry, and you could have just as easily kind of take what you learn from him, take his connections, and then basically go invest your time and energy into the same kind of industry.
Yeah, go work for the family firm or something.
Work for the family firm, exactly. Right. And you've completely gone that 180 from that. You're still making very solid business moves, but they're in areas where there is absolutely no prior history of your family being involved, and I love that. I absolutely love that.
Thank you.
So that's just kissing ass. There's no question.
Okay, speaking of beer,
I love it.
one of the best stories you've ever told me.
Yeah. Oof.
You know what I want to hear.
I do. Yeah.
We can bleep out any manufacturers you want. If it matters.
Well, I don't know if it matters now. It was 10 years ago. I don't like.
Oh, statute of limitations. We're good.
Okay, so racing for BMW. It's the last race of the year in 2006, Petit Le Mans, and we've been told that BMW is not funding racing in North America in 2007 because they were in between, I believe, sort of in between generations on the M3, and there was no real car to race in 2007. So essentially, they sort of took this hiatus. Well, at the same time, as we sort of all knew this was coming, right? So guys were lining up their Panos deals for 2007 with PTG, and you know, Boris had his other stuff going on, and so everybody was kind of figuring out where they were going to go, what they were going to do. So I'd always wanted to go NASCAR racing, and so so in 2006 I started racing stock cars and just getting some experience in stock cars. Right. So I was struggling that year with racing for a 2-car team that had a budget for 1 car, and for whatever contractual or marketing obligations or whatever reason they wanted to was fielding 2 cars, and we were not the lead car, and that was difficult on me.
So you felt like you were funding the whole thing.
Huh?
Did you feel like you were funding the whole thing?
That year is the only year in my career that I raced for a salary.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So what we did at BMW was I brought sponsorship to go World Challenge Racing, and then I brought sponsorship to do the 2004 Rolex Sports Car Series deal, and I went in and said I've got funding to be able to take care of my ride, but if I go fast and can go as fast as my teammates and demonstrate that I'm good enough, I want a job. Yeah. And in 2005, I raced for free, but they didn't pay me, and I covered all my expenses. In 2006, I got paid a salary.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, which was awesome. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, you earned your place.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I was struggling with being the second car, and
just for competitive reasons.
I just was sort of, and it just really got to the point where like we weren't. I mean, they were. You know, it was not a properly fun. Look, we were running the car. This is 2006. We were running the cars that they ran the V8s in 2001.
Right.
Okay. Against like the brand new Ferraris and all this kind. I mean, it was sort of. I remember about halfway through the year going, from the perspective of BMW and from the sponsors, like, what is the value in this? Like, why are we even going to the racetrack? It was really, really rough. I mean, I think the team had between 2 cars, 2 podiums all year. So by the time we got to Petit Le Mans, the train had completely left the station for me. I was already basically like contracted to go race in ARCA in 2007 and just start my my career in stock car racing. So we're at Petit Le Mans, 15 cars in the race, qualified 11th and 13th, and we're basically running around. And you'll have to forgive I'm a little naive on remembering the details of the mechanics of the car and exactly what happened. But we're in the race. We're like a lap down. It's 4 hours, 6 hours, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours in, something like that.
And it's a 10-hour race for those that don't.
Yeah. So it's a long race. So so we're cruising around, like no shot to win, right? Just I'm like looking at my watch, like just waiting to get to North Carolina so I can drive these awesome stock cars. And I'm kind of just, you know what I mean, just trying to enjoy the weekend with my teammates and my friends and everything. So car, I think we had a throttle position sensor failure. We had some sort of failure in the ECU in the car. We had fly-by-wire throttle, so it was an electrical connection. So there was some sort of a software glitch or some sort of electrical issue in the car, and the car lost power. We rolled to a stop in turn like 3, top of the S's,
top of the hill,
up there. And so, you know, the crew can't help get the car back to.
Right.
I don't know if the rules have changed now or something, but
you sort of wait for a yellow
you
and a
can't
tow.
like you can't get like the crew can't jump over the wall and work on the car and get it rolling, and then you drive back on the track, come back to pit lane, or you disqualifies you or something. So the driver has to basically get the car running again, otherwise you would. So they never threw the yellow because I pulled off at the flag station.
Yeah.
And so they're yelling at me through the fence, and I'm like looking at stuff, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. And they're like, cycle the mains, and they're like, go this different map, do all this kind of stuff, try to get the car running. And they're like, we just need to get it fired up because I think for a couple of laps it had started, like the timing had gone awry, and like it was just not running very well. And then finally it just shut off. So so then they're like, all right, so we're finally we run through all of our protocols. They're sitting there at the fence. I'm sitting at the fence. We're kind of just looking at each other. At this point, we're 10 laps down, 20. I mean, we've been sitting there for like 15 or 20 minutes. They never threw the yellow or anything. So I'm sitting there, and they're like, all right, I don't know what we're gonna do here. So they all get in the ATV or the little ATV, and they leave to go back to the pits. And they're like, we'll just wait for a yellow, hang out the car. We could run green for like an hour, right? I don't know how long I'm sitting there. So I go up to the flag worker station, and I'm like, that's about right. That's a good way to finish this deal, right? So
all
like,
equals out.
And some dude's Justin behind the fence, and I turn around, and so I went to college in Chico, California, and there's a guy wearing a Chico State T-shirt, right, in Brazelton, Georgia. And he's like, hey, man, Chico. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. And he's poured Sierra Nevada, which is our beer from Chico, California. He's got it in like one of these tall, yard of beer, right? Kind of a thing, yeah. And he's like, come hit this, brother. Come do this. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, I can't, there's like, that's awesome. But, and I'm sitting there, he's like, come on, man. And all this stuff starts going through my head. Like, I'm over it. I'm just over it, right? So I'm like, we're out of the race. The car's broken. We're out of the race.
Right.
So I go over and drink the guy's yard of beer.
A full yard of IPA.
Yeah. And I think I'd been like double staying. Like I've been in the car for like an hour and 45 minutes, like fully dehydrated, depleted, everything. So I drink this guy's yard of beer. We do some pro hugs, some high fives. I go back to the corner worker station, and I sit there, and it's like hitting me, and I'm like, oh, damn it, Justin, you idiot. And then right about the time I'm like drunk,
feeling it.
Feeling it. Right.
The guys come flying back up on the ATV, and they're like, throw this fuse in the box, like the fuse, E9 or whatever, like in the fuse box. And I'm like, come on.
Oh, no.
So I take this fuse, I pop it in there, I turn the car on, sure, fires right up. Like, all right, bring the thing around, come back to the pits. And we had to go behind the wall because the ECU was still sort of screwing up. But they were like, come back to the pits. We'll go behind the wall. So I get back in the car. We're green. I get back in the car. I put my belt on. I'm driving. I'm going down the back stretch. Like the Audis are going by me, the whole kind of thing. I'm going back to pit road, and I'm like drunk. I mean, I'm sitting there going, I'm not drunk, but I'm like,
but you're not sober.
I'm like, if they breathalyze me. So anyway, so we come back to the pits, and then we go behind the wall, diagnose it. I think Brian gets in the car, Nick Johnson or whoever, and I didn't drive the car again, and we ended up actually finishing the race. So I don't know if I'm the only person that's driven a lap of Petit Le Mans under green legally DOT drunk. Yeah. But I probably would have blown like a .08 if I'd have gotten out of the car and done that. I mean, it's a terrible story. I mean, it's really awful. Like, it's really, really awful.
The best story.
But so I mean, it's like, so here I am. Like, I think back on it, I go, like, I'm a horrible person. Like, I'm a terrible, horrible person.
We're wearing helmets.
Right? Yeah, and I'm like, that's just incredibly the problem is that you have to understand, like, the lead up to this race and the lead up to where I was in my life and my mindset. And it's like, it wasn't stupid. I'm just like, we're out of the race. Yeah, this guy's offering me a beer. Like, I need a little bit of happiness in this like dark storm I'm going through right now. And like,
you're 25.
Yeah. So the whole thing but then on the flip side of that is that you talk to Hans Took and you talk to some of these guys about racing in the 70s and the 80s, and it's like. That's
Different
just
era.
pales in comparison to the culture of racing for a long time. So
plus, that one guy
my
loves
drinking
you
and
now.
petite story.
The Chico guy loves you now.
Yeah.
Like that kid's that dude's kids are named like Justin Marks.
And Justin.
Hollywood and racing have a lot of parallels, and I'll say the negatives, but there's also positives in that too, which is there's con artists because it's a vanity-driven, ego-driven business, right? I don't care if it's taking that Instagram photo of yourself at Daytona or if it's the Instagram photo of you on set. It's still the same boat, right? It's still the same desire to impress and make something that you're not. So with that comes the same degree of con men who are willing to sell you on whatnot. Arguably, I'd say the one thing that makes Hollywood even worse is that it's even more nebulous in terms of what you're creating. Like, at least at the end of the day, you have a race car that's got to hit on track in racing. You don't necessarily have that in Hollywood. But the flip side is there are also genuine people. There really are.
Yes.
And what you find is that like we're all sitting here because we managed to find each other as the people that for whatever reason we all get along and we all gel in the sport. And it's the exact same thing. And like, I mean, I haven't really done movies as much as I have television, but in the television world, it's the exact same thing. You still choose who you go to dinner with. You find the real guys and you build kind of that trench style bond for life. It's the same thing.
Does that mean on the flip side that all those like douchebags are having lunch?
Absolutely. I've developed a term.
It's like three-way selfies. Like, what's up?
Well, I have actually, this came from racing, actually, because we all know, like, actually, and we're going to talk about this, but a lot of people in the marketing PR business think we do the same job.
Yeah, right.
We've had this conversation, and I don't pretend to be a marketing PR guy because I'm terrible at PR, but at the end of the day, I pride myself more on the products that I create more so than the sort of the nebulous bullshit service. And so I don't go to dinner with the people that sort of talk and solve the world's problems. And I've come up with a term I call it the douchoisie.
Douchoisie.
The douchoisie, which are the guys who are sitting there solving the world's problems with racing by talking to the other guys solving the world's problems with racing, but none of them are actually doing the goddamn work.
Anything about
it.
Exactly.
So, but it's the same thing in TV.
It's a deep rabbit hole if you want to go down it because it's like it's amazing. Now that I've had, it comes with I think getting a little older and getting perspective in your life and having a family and being able to sort of see the forest from the trees a little bit more, and it's easier to recognize what everybody's trajectories are and what their motives are, and you kind of like take a step back and look at everything, and it's amazing how deep and complex the psychology of this sport is. It's totally fascinating. I mean,
well, so let's I kind of want to take this to a little bit more serious direction if you're cool with where you know where I'm going with this on the business side. So you wrote a blog, I don't know when that came out, a few months ago, kind of explaining what you feel the problems with motorsports are. And on a surface level, I agree with what you wrote, but I have a very major criticism of it. And I'm serious about this. I have a major criticism of it, and so let's get into this. So
of my assessment?
but I'll tell you why. Because I agree with everything you're saying, but I'll point out what I believe is the problem.
Okay.
So you wrote a blog that basically said that the fundamental problem with motorsports, and you understand business because you've driven as a guy who's brought money to a team. You come from a family that comes from big business kind of money. You've developed successful small businesses, so you kind of get the sport. You get what a small business has to do. You get what a big business has to do. And you wrote a fairly poignant article about the challenge with motorsport right now is that there's not a lot of new thinking. Basically, is the inherent argument. And you use the example of like Zappos. Zappos is a new company that started 10 years ago, has been hugely successful. And it's because they took a very bold move with their marketing to say, we're going to offer overnight shipping in everything that we order. And that turned the company around, and it made them a highly successful thing. And motorsports is not doing that kind of approach, that bold, this is what we've got to do thinking to be successful. I 100% agree with that general principle. Where I disagree or where I get frustrated when I see those kind of articles is that that's right, but no one ever goes the next step and goes, well, why aren't we? And this is my big fundamental problem. I'm curious if you agree with this. My problem with racing right now is that it requires small business thinking to be successful. And what I mean by that is we have to be aggressive in the marketing approach that we're taking, the sort of business development strategies that we're taking, because the current model isn't working. Here's the problem with that, is that Zappos worked because it was one guy and maybe a team of investors and his very specific vision. It was small business thinking that gave him the freedom to do what he wants to do. The problem is we need to treat the sport, I don't care if you're a team, a series, a manufacturer, you need to have that very aggressive small business thinking, but the problem is it's all done in a big business environment, and that's where we're struggling as a sport. So Porsche maybe should consider doing X, Y, or Z with their marketing, but they're not going to, because why? Who's controlling that? It's a guy who's a mid-level marketing manager who just doesn't want to get fired. He's not going to sit there and go, oh, we should really make this video or do this PR approach or whatever it is. And I believe that's fundamentally the problem with motorsport right now, is that it's big business incapable of taking small business thinking.
Okay, so a couple of things. One is, I referenced Zappos as an example of disruption.
Right.
So I referenced Zappos as a way of like, no, we're gonna build a business fundamentally on a concept that's never ever been done before.
Right.
Okay, and it's either going to fall flat on its face and our investors are going to lose their money, or we're going to completely revolutionize the e-commerce model.
Right.
Okay, which they ended up doing. So big business or small business, whatever. I think that it. One of the things you have to think about when you're sort of theorizing how to fix motorsport is that it's very, very difficult to lump motorsport into one basket.
Completely.
Okay? Because NASCAR is very, very different than the World Endurance Championship,
Sure.
which is very, very different than IndyCar and World Challenge and
Sure,
drag
sure,
racing
sure.
and sprint car racing and everything else that you have out
Right.
there. So I think what it goes back to is, what is your identity? How do you define success?
Right.
And I was talking about from the context of the sport from like a sanctioning body side, like we know what's going to be successful for Porsche, right? Porsche's
Right.
trying to sell cars,
Right.
right? Audi's trying to sell cars.
Right.
Ferrari's they're all trying to sell cars. But this is where NASCAR is a lot different than sports car racing. NASCAR has, and I'm not this is not to say that motorsports in general is not an entertainment property,
Right.
but you have to look at what it is that is your brand and what is your product. Okay, so what are you contributing to the world? So for a long time, forever, Formula One and today, Formula One and the world and Le Mans and these World Endurance Championship, this is about technology, it's about innovation, right? It's about showcasing, what the OEMs are doing in their factories. It's about, the best road racers in the world, all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's the fastest and best cars. What essentially was the genesis of my thinking that led me to writing that article was I was sitting on pit road at I don't know where it was. Maybe it was the first Kentucky Xfinity race this year or something like that. And we were at driver introductions. And I was looking down pit road and I said, there's 40 cars here. So if you add up how much money these teams spent to be here this weekend, these 40 teams, okay, not just variable costs, but like what they value a per race deal for, a per race budget for.
Sure.
It's like $5 million or something. I don't know what the number was, but it's millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I looked up in the grandstands, and there was like freaking 500 people there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we've all seen that the television ratings are declining and declining and declining. And it's just sort of like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Like, why are we doing this? Right. It's ultimately, I'm like, this feels like a Ferrari track day.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. This feels like a bunch of people coming out and spending money and no one giving a about it.
Right.
So, so that's kind of prompted the article. So, you go back and you go, what is your reason for being here? So, with that being said, when you look at sports car racing, what is the problem right now? And I'm asking both of you, if you go to a sports car race, you go to a world endurance race, and there are some great races. Like the last couple of years, Petit's been awesome.
Sure.
I mean, great. But when you look at it as a whole, what needs to be fixed in sports car racing?
I have like 10 answers.
Okay, so what do you think the most important thing is? Because what I'm getting at here is, do you want to be an entertainment property? Do you want to be a sport where like thousands and thousands of people come and buy tickets and hundreds of thousands of people watch on TV and it's truly an entertainment property? Because if that's what your goal is, racing has some stout competition in this culture these days, right? People want instant feedback. They want like a lot of action right now. They don't want to do anything for longer than an hour. Right? And so when I look at NASCAR, I said, if NASCAR wants to reverse this trend, it needs to be way, way cheaper, okay? And then what I mean by way cheaper is take the innovation out of it. Because NASCAR's never been about innovation.
Right.
It's never been about innovation. So why are we at the wind tunnel, and why are we at the shaker rig, and why are we in the tunnels doing aero coast down tests and just all this kind of stuff? Why are we doing any of that? I'm like, if we want to truly turn this ship around, it has to be so radical and so my opinion is it has to be so outside of the box that the sport would almost be unrecognizable. And that's not to turn your back on the history and the heritage and the purists and tradition and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, what if one company owned all the cars and all the engines? And on Thursday every week, the teams went and picked out their car and picked out their engine, and all they did was put a setup on it, and their driver freaking drove it. And then on Monday, they all take it back. Right? What if we did all one-day shows? You show up, you practice for 45 minutes. After practice is over, you line up, you qualify, and then you race, and everybody's there for 6 hours, and that's it. What if you race on a Monday night? Now, this is a complicated thing, right? So it's like, so I think one of the things I thought about when I was writing this article is like, what I think the best thing that could happen, and I'm going to make some enemies saying this if they listen to your guys' podcast, I don't know, but
we'll find out.
But
this is
almost
Larson-Marks.
Shut it, Jim.
is almost the best thing that could happen to NASCAR is if the guys that have owned it and run it for the last 50 years just get out, just sell it. take their money and retire and sell it to a large private equity company, a Sequoia Capital or a Blackstone or a KKR or something like that, that's going to run it like a sports league, that's going to put a commissioner in charge, that's going to take the teams. Right now, the teams are manufacturing companies.
Well,
and they shouldn't be manufacturing companies. They should be sporting teams.
What you just said there is what I didn't read in the article, in the sense of and so my criticism is what you just answered. So that's actually I turned that around and compliment you because all I heard was like this. We would have to do these radical things and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I agree with everything you're saying, but it's never going to happen because that's not how it works. And the reason why I say that's not how it works goes back to my middle management big business argument, because if you're asking NASCAR to fundamentally change everything, that requires somebody who's living in Daytona Beach, who's a middle manager, who's making $100,000, who's just happy to have his job and support his family, to have him raise his hand and go, I got an idea, and get laughed out. And that's never going to happen. So to your point, the only way it would happen would be to blow the whole thing up and have somebody else completely own it. And
that's what I'm talking about. Disruption is that you have to be willing to fail.
I agree.
You have to do something. You have to be willing to fail. My theory is, and I was not, when NASCAR had their meteoric rise in popularity in the mid '90s, I was 15 years old.
Right. I'm with you.
Okay, so just to qualify the comment, I believe that the meteoric rise in popularity of NASCAR was due completely to variables that were outside of what NASCAR was actually doing.
Sure.
It was a perfect storm of a great economy.
Right.
There was you had your Dale Earnhardt versus Jeff. You had huge personalities. Dale Earnhardt versus Jeff Gordon, right?
Contrasting personalities.
Exactly. You had, it was relatively inexpensive and the competition was pretty good. I mean, you could make an argument that really the competition from a time standpoint, the field is closer than ever, but they can't. It's hard for them to race, right? They can't really go right. So they can't really race, but that's a whole nother thing.
And within the market space, you had another series blowing itself up.
Right, you had IndyCar had their creating a lot of problems for themselves, and so you had all this perfect storm, and it blew up, right? And it's like the NFL was calling Daytona Beach saying, "How do you do it?" Right? And all this stuff was happening, and they were building new tracks, and they were putting 200,000 seats around every track. Yeah. And then what happened? And then the economic downturn came. There were big advents in technology that sort of altered forever the landscape of young people's attention and what captivated young people. The advent of social media and reality television and all this kind of stuff came in, and all of a sudden NASCAR had a problem. Okay, we're losing viewers. People are finding other stuff to do. Yeah. Well, the problem is when you haven't 100% built your success by a company initiative and a vision of a great leader, then when it goes down, you don't know what to do.
There's no backup plan,
because you didn't build it. Yeah. So you don't know how it was built. So you don't know how to fix it when it's going down.
Yeah.
So it's essentially been going down and down and down and down and down. And the problem with NASCAR, and I say this stuff not because I have a problem with NASCAR, but because I love it more than just about anything in the world, and I'm passionate about it being successful. But there's not the right company culture there, right? Like I have gone down to Charlotte. I might be digging a grave here for me. I don't care. But if you go, I go down to Charlotte and meet with, driver services and integrated marketing communications departments and all the people that work down there every day.
Right.
Great people, intelligent people, right? No empowerment.
Yep.
Right. And no freedom to think outside of the box, to have these initiatives or whatever. So there's a lot of people working there that could do great things for the sport and great things for the company that are there because they want NASCAR on their resume, and they're working towards that great job at the NFL and the NBA. They're not pot committed, lifetime committed to the sport.
Which falls into my whole middle management concern about the sport. We talk about this daily. Yeah. So I have a term.
It's your second term tonight.
I have a term. No, but I'm serious. I say this for all of motorsports. I don't care if it's stock car, F1, WEC, whatever. When I grew up loving, and I loved all forms growing up, what I loved about it was the fearless nature of the sport. And I'm not talking about drivers being big, brave heroes. I'm talking about everything, whether it was, Dale Earnhardt not being afraid of getting into it with a guy, to Harvey Postlethwaite not being afraid to develop a awesome F1 car with no money and really, really innovative thinking. He wasn't scared of it failing. He just went out and said, F it, we're going to do a high nose, and it worked. That all comes from what I think made the sport cool, which is this culture of fearlessness. And that's kind of the term I think needs to come back, a culture of fearlessness, where drivers, engineers, designers, marketing people were not afraid to do what they thought was going to be awesome. And I feel like the culture of fearlessness, I don't care if we're talking about safety, I don't care if we're talking about marketing, I don't care if we're talking about business development, the fearlessness in the sport, it's lacking every year.
I think one of the issues is that, and I'm sort of skewing this conversation towards NASCAR because it's where I've been the last couple of years, and it's sort of what I wrote the article for. But I think that there has been such a reluctancy on NASCAR's part to be selfless and to reach out to great, successful innovators in business and in sport and to get some guidance. I think that there's too much pride and too much narcissism and ego down there going like, well, this is NASCAR. It's a multi-billion-dollar company and this and that. It's like, I'd be calling Dana White right now.
Absolutely.
And I'd be like, here's a guy that took a freaking bought a company for $500,000, right? And was incredibly innovative, and now has a multi-billion-dollar property. Who just bought him? IMG or somebody just bought him, or somebody like that. Like, just calling him and just say, here's what we're dealing with.
Right.
But
somebody has to have the balls
Help
to sit
us.
there and say that, and that's my fear for the sport is that I really can't think of one guy in that office who'd be like, here's an idea, because he knows he's going to get laughed out.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about creating a culture of fearlessness, there needs to be an environment where people are not scared of speaking their minds on new ways to do it, including somebody just having the balls to go, maybe we're not doing it right, let's call Dana White.
Every great successful business story that I've ever read, and I always skew towards Silicon Valley because it's what my upbringing is. I mean, when you read about the story of a Mark Zuckerberg, or you read about the Eric Schmidt, or you read about, these guys that created these great properties, Twitter, all this kind of stuff, these guys all took tremendous risks. Yeah. So there's no great success without taking a tremendous risk. Now, I believe the chase was the advent of the chase, and then the development of stages of the chase. Yeah. Okay, for the Sprint Cup Championship, I think it was like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff that we need to do because it creates drama. Now, you had a lot of purists that were like, "This is bull. This is whatever." But
and they're still watching.
But the problem is like
the purists are growing thinner and thinner.
Yeah, I mean,
eventually when there's no one left to criticize it, you want everybody to watch any of it. Yeah.
NASCAR is an aging demographic, and they're just not they're just not doing enough to attract the young people in America. Because young people in America, if you present them with NASCAR and the model right now, and like what it's like to go to a race, how long the races are, where they are, how it works,
it's confusing,
right? They'd all look at it and be like, "That's like the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Right.
I would ever spend any time doing that.
100%.
And that's terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
For somebody that's personally vested in the sport from a Motorplex standpoint and having businesses here in North Carolina, it's just terrifying to me. So, I mean, not to continue to beat a dead horse, but I think it's going to take a radical change of culture, a radical change of leadership to inflict some change. And you're essentially at this point in the sport, you're going to piss some people off. And I don't want to discredit those people's loyalty to the sport.
Sure.
But at some point, you're going to have to just think you're starting over.
Right.
All right. Getting back on to fun stuff.
All right. Tell me about in a race car.
Yeah.
I've never done that.
Really?
I've never in a race car. I've only pissed once.
Okay.
Really?
I've only pissed in a race car once. It was at Portland in 2006 in the ALMS race.
What is it about Portland?
Yeah.
Oriole did the same thing.
I was hot and humid, and it was a terribly hot and humid day, and I had to piss, and I pissed, and
and you could just go.
Huh?
You just tried.
I had a mental block for about a lap and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I loosened my belt on that long straightaway and kind of lifted my ass up and just sort of relaxed, and it was good.
Oh, okay.
And then got out of the car. Brian Sellers got in it, sat in it for a little while, and then.
You have any idea?
I don't think I've ever told him.
Okay. Now he knows.
I don't think I've ever. Actually, to be honest with you, I have never told him. Yeah. So Brian Sellers got in.
Sat in your seat.
Sat in my pee seat,
and now it's on dinnerwithracers.com.
Now it's on the record.
All right.
I think he'll forgive me.
I don't know that he listens to this.
Someone
He'll hear about it.
Someone will tweet him. Yeah.
At Brian Sellers.
Hashtag PC.
First person to tweet at Brian Sellers, hashtag PC, will get 100 Riley bucks.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very
100.
I've got a crisp
Riley
one
bill.
in my hand right now.
Anyway, go on.
All right.
How are we going to track that? I'm not going to think to look every day for that.
It'll be the first one you
It'll
see.
be the
You'll
first one
know.
to see.
You'll know
Okay.
the first one you see.
Tag me or Ryan in it as well, just so we're cognizant. You'll get 100 Riley bills.
So let me just say one final thing about
boy,
that.
he's
Okay,
getting into it.
I just because
Are we
this
talking
is
about pee
this is
sheets?
this is something
About
that's,
peeing in
that's-
the seat?
No,
This
this is something that's very very important to me, and it's
Okay.
and at one point that I
Integrity
made
matters.
in the last 20 minutes that I want to stand here is that the most important thing is defining as a series or a type of racing what you want to be as a series and as a
100%
type of
agree.
racing.
Yeah.
So as Formula One, what do you want to be? How do you define success? As NASCAR, how do you
Right.
define success? Sports car racing, how do you define success?
Well,
So-
and that's exactly my problem with leadership in terms of middle management is that we're too busy checking boxes like, well, we need to be this and we need to be that, as
Yeah.
opposed to just fundamentally going, this is where we need to be.
Yeah.
I
you
have
know.
a major issue with North American sports car racing being determined by people in another country
Absolutely.
that don't race
Yeah.
in North American sports car
Absolutely.
racing.
Are you trying to attract fans, or are you trying to attract Tracy Crones, or are
Right.
you trying
What's
to
the goal?
attract OEMs? Like,
That's-
who are you trying to attract? I mean, if you want fans, you don't want to have to explain for 30
Anything.
minutes what
Anything.
you are
It should
to
be
a fan.
self-explanatory. You walk
Yeah.
up and you see 7 rally cars in a stadium parking lot.
Right. Or a bunch of GT3 cars that are all like the cars you dream about.
You
and
look
read
at
in
it
Road
and you're like,
Track.
oh, that's the
Yeah.
NSX or that's
Right.
the Jag. Okay,
Yep.
I get it. Yeah. You and I have talked about this before in the past, and I was like, okay, this guy and I are kind of the same, and you'll appreciate this because you've been in both worlds. People very rarely understand how badass a stock car is. Okay? You came from racing and sports car racing where you got to drive some really cool you know, the BMW M3s and all those neat cars that they built, as well as other neat, like, Porsches and stuff.
Yeah.
And you were like, I want to drive a stock car. And now you've driven literally Sprint Cup on the road courses, Xfinity on all the tracks, you know, trucks on all the tracks. Explain how crazy, like, qualifying a truck at Atlanta is, or running in the pack at Daytona, or taking the green at Sonoma in a stock car. Because I don't think fans really appreciate the absolute badassness that a stock car is. They all make more power than sports cars in sports car racing. Like, what's the lowest number of horsepower in a top tier?
Oh, yeah, it's north of 800. Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Audi at Le Mans numbers.
Yeah, right.
You know, people don't realize that. They think
Yeah.
dumb rednecks. They don't understand that.
Well, so, okay, it's a difficult question to answer because it's difficult to articulate the experience. What I would say what makes the type of racing so impressive to me is that the consequences of getting it wrong are so big.
Yeah, right.
So if you screw up the Oak Tree corner at VIR in an Audi, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to have to clean the splitter when you come in, right? Or you're going to pop the tire off the bead or something like that, right? If you get it wrong going into turn 1 at Texas, you're going to hit the wall at 175 miles an hour.
That's
and you're
slowing down,
destroy,
too.
Right,
Yeah.
destroying the race. It's going to be a hell of a hit. It's so what it is it's so sort of set that as the environment.
Right.
And then you have everybody racing cars that are essentially the same, and nobody's scared of
Right. That's the crazy thing about that sport.
So nobody, I mean, because the thing is, you're not driving $250,000 sports cars.
Right.
You know, you're driving a car. If you don't hurt the motor, the thing's worth like $30,000.
That's
or
all
$40,000.
the chassis.
Right? It's
You take
literally
the
like
motor
a
out.
consumable. Like when
Exactly.
you go to these
Yeah.
teams, right? Their equity isn't in their race cars; it's in their tools in their shop, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you go to, real time. If you looked at Real Time Racing's balance sheet, like the race cars on the floor is a big number,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's so it's a big deal if you wreck one of your NSXs.
Yeah.
I mean, it hurts the company.
Right.
I have completely destroyed 5 cars this year in Ganassi.
This year
At
alone.
Ganassi.
Yeah,
this
this year alone.
Just completely.
Right.
I mean,
That would
big
bankrupt.
crashes.
That would bankrupt
Big crashes.
every team in
yeah,
IMSA
and
if you
that's
did
not to
5
say
cars,
that they don't
you know?
care. I mean, that's bad.
Yeah,
right?
no,
I mean,
but
that's
it's
a bad
a
thing.
different world.
But
Yeah.
you have to you have to drive into the corner, every lap, willing to accept that that's going to happen every single time.
Yeah,
Right. And
right.
these are big problems, right? When you crash cars at Dover, I had a huge crash at Dover a couple weeks ago. I had
Yeah,
a huge
it's
crash
massive.
at Daytona this year. I mean, I had some big ones this year, and that's so. I think you're like, okay,
Thank you.
drive a car that doesn't really do anything very well.
Right.
Okay, so the sports cars do things. They stop really well.
Yes.
They do things. They have tons of grip. They do anything really well. Stock car doesn't really want to turn. It doesn't really want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so you're driving around on a 1.5-mile track. It's banked 30 degrees, and you're trying to hold it wide open. And the way to go fast is to be in 7 degrees of yaw.
Right.
You're like
Right.
really right up against spinning out. Like
Yeah.
the more you go, the more sort of yaw you put in it, literally sort of the faster you go. I mean, there's a point of diminishing returns where you're loose and you have to lift.
Right.
So you're like, all right, well, that's a tough thing to do
Yeah.
by yourself at a test day, right? So now go 3 wide into turn 1,
Yes.
and who's the first one that's going to lift? No one's going to lift.
Yeah, no one lifts.
Nobody is.
Right.
So, and I think that it has to do with, it's a very different culture of driving and like where these people came out of. I mean,
Yeah.
you come out of type of racing, whether you're racing, midgets or sprint cars on dirt tracks, you're racing late models or whatever. Like you never grew up driving a fancy car. You're never that worried about the financial damage of crashing one of your
Yeah.
cars. You were
Right.
worried about hitting your head, right? Or you were
Yeah.
worried about really just losing points.
Right.
No matter how big of a crash it was, you didn't want to lose points. You've got guys that come out of that type of culture and that type of mentality.
Yeah.
And then you mix that with the fact that even if you are signed to a Penske or a Gibbs, even if you're a guy like Eric Jones or a guy like, Ryan Blaney or I'm trying to think of some of these other guys that are signed to big teams that essentially essentially have made it. Like, nothing. You have no security. There's no job security. So you almost live and die by every race weekend.
Right.
And so, if you lift, it's almost like everybody's sort of willing to just not lift, and if I crash, I crash, or something bad happens, something bad happens. But if that doesn't happen, then I've made a progression in my career. It's just sort of like every corner at every racetrack is the kink at Road America with no runoff.
Right.
And everybody's daring everybody else to go flat. And the one guy's going to do it 150 times in a row is going to win the race.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why Kyle Busch is a hero, because the guy is willing
So what happens is, to that point, it becomes hugely about what's between the ears.
Right.
Confidence. Right. Swagger. Like, I got this. Because the same race car on the same day in the same situation, if you're hesitant versus I'm the best driver out here, is the difference between winning a race or crashing with the same car, with the same set of circumstances.
Yeah.
Kyle Busch gets in every race and goes, there's nobody better than me in this race. Nobody.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And I mean, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right.
So explain to the average race fan what the NASCAR shop experience is like.
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, anymore these big cup shops are manufacturing companies more than anything. I mean, they have assembly lines, and there's engineers and fabricators, and there's a whole system. When you go to a sports car shop, you buy this car from the manufacturer. I mean, I guess very rarely now in sports car racing does anybody build a car, right? You buy it from the OEM.
No, maybe outside of Bill Riley, that's about it.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, everybody buys their car, they get it, it sits on their shop floor, they develop it, they set it up, they get ready for the races, they do the kind of thing. Well, the cars in NASCAR, all the innovation and the building of the cars is happening basically under that roof.
Yeah, exactly. All in-house.
Yeah, all in-house. So you have these
even down to like K&N teams, like the one that you co-own with H. Scott.
Yeah.
They build their own chassis there.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a K&N team. That's the equivalent of a Continental
right.
Tire ST
Right.
series, where you would build your own car.
Right.
Literally, it starts as a pile of tubes.
Yes.
And it used to
You
be
have
a pile of
jig,
tubes and sheet metal. Now you guys have like a stock.
Yep.
You can buy a body, right? Like a
Right.
carbon body or something, just to make it easier.
Yeah, it's a fiberglass one now.
Yeah, which is still funny to me because it's
Yeah.
not carbon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's still older technology.
Well, that was actually a great cost measure that they did. I mean, you don't.
100%.
Yeah. It's a bummer because it cost a lot of fabricators jobs.
It did,
Yeah,
for sure.
And I mean, I think that just sort of harks back to the way NASCAR started, right? Like 40 or 50 years ago, there was very little sort of technology. I mean, I talked to Kenny Wallace about this. I said, you know, what's the biggest difference 25 years, 30 years ago to now? He's like, there was no engine leasing programs. Like, we didn't have, like, he said, we built our motor in our shop, put it in our car, and went to the racetrack.
Yeah.
Well, anymore it's these huge companies of development, and there's this, there's a path through the shop, right? A part of the shop, you've got like 25 people, lined up on all these surface plates, and they're building these cars, and then they get pushed out, and they go to assembly, and then they go to paint, and then they go to or they go to paint, and they go to assembly, and then they go to like the setup, and then they go to the test team, and then final prep, and all this kind of stuff. And the pipeline is huge. I mean, you've got entire groups, families of cars that are essentially built to one sort of engineering idea, right? It's like, well, let's do this with the front clips geometry-wise. Let's build these cars, and we'll take them, and if it doesn't work, then whatever, we'll throw them away and kind of go down a different path. So that's the difference. You walk into that, and it looks like a manufacturing facility. I think.
Yeah. Well,
more than anything. I mean, really, there are. I mean, think about it this way. There are 200. I mean, I don't know if my numbers are right. There are over 200 people that work for Chip Ganassi Racing.
Most likely.
And there's like 50 that go to the racetrack.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was what I was going to
exactly.
point out. It's like if you go to Turner's shop on the racing side.
And by no means are we sliding Turner or any team like that.
Exactly.
But it's the
GMG,
reality of the
it's
situation.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The guys on the racing side of Turner's shop, all of them are going to the racetrack.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. At real time, I think we have like somewhere in the 20 people full time, and that might even be high because we've been building a lot of cars to get where we are. But like on a full time basis, I'd say we have 18 people in the shop, and 16 of them go to the race. Yeah, you know what I mean, and are also doing all this other stuff.
And that's a challenge in when you're looking from a human resources standpoint, or these people trying to build these sort of championship cultures in these companies. And this is where Rick Hendrick has done a great job, and Joe Gibbs and Ben Penske has done a great job. Is that it's difficult to get everybody in a 300 person or 200 or 500 person company fighting together for the same thing and impassioned and driven by the same thing when only a very small fraction of them is going to the racetrack and everybody else is watching it on TV.
Right.
So like a big theme within Ganassi is like, how can we get the engineers in front of their computers on the second floor as vested as the pit crew? And how can we get the guys hanging bodies as vested as the truck drivers?
Because they're
And
not getting
basically
that
in the
at-track
effort,
excitement
right?
that you get. Yeah.
But whereas in sports car racing, it's sort of like it's a real family. I mean, like at PTG, nobody, like when we were racing, the shop was locked up and the
Empty.
lights were off.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
You know?
and to exactly that point, PTG, Turner, anything when they win the 24, every one of those guys gets to stand on the podium.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
exactly
that's
right.
not going to happen at
That's
Ganassi.
exactly right.
That
So
is legit.
you started out in road racing, sports cars, where you didn't want to hurt the cars. And you go over to stock cars, oval racing, and you realize that sort of bending up the cars is part of the culture. So where in that did you decide, okay, now I'm going to start my own team?
Well, I started. Okay, so the K&N. So my first race team that I started was a sprint car team,
Right.
with Kyle Larson,
Yeah.
and so I was always curious in getting involved in race team ownership or at least sort of experiencing that side of the business and seeing if it was something that I enjoyed doing.
Right.
And Kyle and I got to know each other because he came out to the GoPro Motorplex a lot when he first got to town and first started racing. And so we got to know each other, and as he was kind of rising through the ranks, and he was in Xfinity, and before he'd gotten his Cup deal, and when he was sort of on the verge of getting his Cup deal, his true passion was sprint car racing, and it's kind of what I grew up watching coming in from St. Louis before I moved to California at a young age, going to dirt tracks in Iowa and Illinois. And so I loved that kind of racing. And, he loved it too. Was passionate about it. It's still his favorite kind of racing to do.
Sure.
And, but he signs the big Cup deal and, they don't want him to really race anymore.
Right.
But so I kind of was thinking, well, here's a great opportunity for a partnership. Like if we start a team together, I can put the business together and I can, figure out how to run the business and he can help me understand sprint car racing and find the people, like what drivers are out there should we get, what crew guys, the whole kind of thing. And then, he can learn about the business side of it. He stays sort of personally and emotionally invested in sprint car racing, even though he can't really do it anymore.
Right.
And so we started that team, and it's been awesome. Like, it's been an awesome success. We've attracted some good sponsorship, and we've won a ton of races. We've won, in 2.5 years, I think we've won over 30 races or something like that. I mean, the Kings Royal at Eldora, a huge race. We've run top 5 at the Knoxville Nationals. I've won all kinds of big races. I don't know how many sprint car fans listen to this, but we've run the Ironman 55 and we've won all across the United States. We won our first World of Outlaws race that we entered at Eldora. Really awesome. So that was a lot of fun. It's not a business that you would.
Well,
it's not really a business,
Yeah, that
right?
was
It's like,
kind of
let's
my-
just get this thing to pay for itself. Sprint car racing is really interesting because you race for prize money.
Okay.
So if you win a lot of races and do well, you can almost cash flow the team off of
Well,
prize
so that
money.
was kind of my question. Is you are in theory trying to keep it in the black?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's like, I don't pay my driver a salary. My driver makes 50% of the prize money. So he's
cool.
like
So
literally
he's
like really
pushing.
personally vested.
Well, that was
in
what we
the
loved
effort
about.
every night.
That's what we loved about Clausen so much when we met him last year was that he was like so old school, and the fact that he's racing for
that's
his
all
living.
these guys do. I mean, and so it's a pretty crazy kind of racing, but they don't tear a ton of stuff up because there's some mutual respect. A lot of guys are paying their mortgage with their prize money. So I mean, it's really fun. It got me an opportunity to expand my brand into a new sort of corner or niche of the sport. And it gave me some good experience in managing sort of people in a competitive environment.
Okay. So there's still a value to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on the K&N side, that was an opportunity that sort of just sort of fell in my lap based on Turner Scott Motorsports going away, which was Steve Turner and Harry Scott, truck team, nationwide team. And so Steve Turner got out of the sport and moved back home, and then they were trying to figure out how to sort of divide up the assets, and there was an opportunity. They had this K&N team, Turner Scott Motorsports, and so Harry came to me and said, you want to try to carve this K&N team out because it's really successful and wins championships and be a fun thing to do. I can try to get this sort of, we can find a way to kind of get this out of the deal. It's the first time in my life where I have been invested in giving the next generation of racers an opportunity to succeed.
That's where the value is.
So last year we had 5 cars, and William Byron won the championship, who's racing the trucks for Kyle Busch this year,
Right.
and he's leading points right now. He's won
Right.
5 or 6 races. Like
Yeah,
he's
stud.
doing awesome. We won a race with Rico Abreu. You know, we just, you know, with Justin Haley and Scott Heckard, and we've had like Dalton Sargent race for us, and like it kind of set like, you know, sort of set the career in motion for a lot of these guys. And then this year we won the championship with Justin Haley, which is really awesome because last year he was beat by his teammates on a pretty regular basis, but he really stepped his game up this year, and he's going to be stepping up to NASCAR next year and all that. So from that standpoint, it's been fun.
Right.
But the business has been too difficult to run and to make any money. We've been losing money at it, so
Right.
we're shutting it down.
Well, but that's what I've always liked about you is like, you know, your investments into racing are obviously driven out of passion, but your import-export business, GoPro Motorplex, they're always very sensible when I look at them like, okay, I can see how he's turning a profit with that.
Right.
You know, you're probably not making millions off any of this stuff, but they're sensible businesses. And so when I saw team ownership, I was like, ooh, I hope that works. But you're obviously shutting it down if it's not making sense. And so I have such respect for that call. So
yeah, I mean, it's look, there's a lot of things that I want to do in my career, and you know, I don't. It's just I'm not gonna you know, kill myself to keep a K&N team going. And Harry's not going to do the same thing, and it's one of the things that's really tough about this business, that we've got, you know, 25 plus really good people that work for that race team, and so it's like literally Harry and I go like, you know, this is too tough to make money. We're losing money. We're having to put our own money in it to keep it afloat. Like, do you want to do this anymore? And him and I make that decision over beers, and it affects the jobs of 25 people. That's a really, really difficult thing.
Right.
yeah,
There's a lot of
You're
people
34.
in this town that make those decisions and don't give a
right.
There are teams in this town that lay everybody off after the last race and then rehire everybody a month before Daytona.
Yeah.
My common theme I think about with Justin Marks is he the next Roger Penske? Is that something you kind
It's
of see
incredibly.
yourself?
Okay, so let me. So
are you lining yourself up that
It's
way?
incredibly flattering. So, okay, so how do you define Roger Penske when you ask me that question?
Businessman who has a racing program.
Okay.
And I see that you do enough stuff. You do B2B deals.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people, that's like the young kid who wants to be a race car driver, doesn't understand how much sponsorship, I'm using quotations here, is actually B2B.
Yeah.
But you understand how that works.
So when you look at guys like Roger Penske and Rick Hendrick, you know, these guys have incredibly successful race teams, and they're thought of as the great race car owners, of team owners of history and of our sport, and that's true. But these guys have multi-billion-dollar companies that don't have anything to do with racing.
Right.
Like, they both have incredible dealership networks. Roger Penske has his truck leasing business and a lot of other things. And Rick Hendrick with his automotive, his parts and his business and everything. And, you know, for those guys, you know, for a guy like Mr. Hendrick, you know, Hendrick Motorsports is like my Larson-Marks Racing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one of the smaller businesses I have, right? But people that have spent their whole life in sprint car racing go, you know, it's a big sprint car team, the whole kind of thing. But it's like I'm sort of cash flowing it from my other businesses, and if we do well, it takes care of itself. It's kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I can sort of leverage other relationships to help it. I like going to the racetrack, the whole kind of thing. So if you define Roger Penske as being somebody who has worked really, really hard in his career, identified the competitive advantages and the talents and the skills that he's had, and worked hard to fully exploit those and build the biggest business possible, then that's I would love to try to emulate that in my life. Do I have the desire? Now, with that being said, do I have a desire to own a cup team? No. No. I mean, I think.
What if you had that kind of disposable income?
That's sort of what I'm saying, right? So, like, you're not going to do it with go-karts, but if I end up with a business that has $2 billion in revenue a year, and I've got all of my vendors and my customers and my business partners are people that love racing, then it's a whole different conversation to have. But I'm not going to, as a 35-year-old in Charlotte with a go-kart track and an import distribution business and a sprint car team, put all my chips in the basket of one day I want to win a Sprint Cup championship as an owner, because I feel like, you know,
you wouldn't do it unless it made sense.
Yeah, it's just. So look at the owners in the sport, right? It's the same guys for the last 25 years. It's really been like no new blood. I mean, Michael Waltrip came in and they did a great job with their race team, but they went out of business. They couldn't make it work.
Well, the guys who are making it, I mean, gonna. I mean, especially Penske and Hendrick. Well, let's say are the two big dogs.
Sure.
They have these billion-dollar businesses that, to your point about B2B, if you have a billion-dollar business, it also means you have a ton of vendors and a ton of network partners that are working through that business, and that's the leverage in motorsports that they can pull that Michael Waltrip is trying to go out and sell sponsorship on its own can't leverage.
It's too hard because when you think about setting your life on a path to try to have success as an entrepreneur, starting a business and having success, it's like you need an idea, you need an addressable market, you need some sort of a disruptive visionary idea. You need it's like how are you you need scalability. You don't need those things. But when I think of what I'm going to, you only get one shot at life. If I think about what I'm going to spend all my time doing, it's going to be like, how am I going to define success as a cup owner?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, winning a Sprint Cup championship, that's like the stuff that dreams are made of, right? I mean, it's kind of like, but at the end of the day, like, do you have an asset you can sell?
Right.
Do you have something that, like, have you built a product or a service that's going to serve a market, a consumer for a long period of time? I mean, what if one of these, these guys they're a little bit, when they look at their future, they're a little bit of a slave to their succession plan, right?
Sure.
Like, if there's nobody, these guys are aging, if there's no one to pass the company down to,
right?
I mean, you're like one or two really big sponsors pulling out, not being able to replace them from going out of business as a cup team at any given point.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, that's not an interesting thing to put the rest of my life into.
I agree.
So we had lunch, I guess I would say dinner,
I don't even remember.
2 days ago with Matt Hardigree from Jalopnik.
It was a
.com.
linner.
That was like a
linner.
It was a linner.
A dunch.
Yeah. And his question for you, because we do a pass-along segment, was if you're a 13-year-old in the USA and you've got the goods, you can race and win and you're talented, how do you make it? Is it worth trying knowing the odds are stacked against you?
At 13 years old?
And that comes from a guy that knows that you have a karting company and that whole world.
Yeah. So at 13 years old, absolutely.
Yeah.
At 19 years old, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Copy that. That's a great answer. So tomorrow morning we're gonna have coffee and scones.
Sure.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe donuts.
Maybe some donuts with Marty Smith, who I believe you're familiar.
Mm-hmm. I am.
If you had any question in the world for Marty Smith, which you had something loaded up.
Yeah.
What
So I'm a big fan of Marty, and I think he's a great brand in what he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very unique personality in what he does.
Yeah.
And he has transitioned his career from NASCAR to college football.
Yeah.
And he's been killing it over there.
Yeah.
Like, I watch him every Saturday morning at College Game Day
Right.
and that kind of stuff, and he's doing such a good job. I would ask him, as a journalist, as an investigative journalist, as somebody that's trying to showcase the human experience and personalities and stories, tell me the difference between the world of college football and the world of NASCAR as it relates to the stories that you're trying to bring to the world.
So you have not one but two kids now.
Yeah.
And how old? It's Olivia?
Olivia's 3 and Presley is 11 weeks.
Yeah, Presley's
Oh,
got
wow.
that frown
Yeah.
down.
Chub, dude.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
that
Presley
picture.
was born like a week before he won Mid-Ohio,
Putting
right?
on the LBs. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
How has being a dad changed Justin Marks?
I think it has made me everything that I do, I'm doing now in the context of setting an example for somebody. So I've never had to worry in my life about setting an example for somebody else, right? I mean, you always sort of spend your life looking out for number one.
Right.
But a lot of things I do now, I think about, what kind of, and maybe this just goes back to my experience with my father and how it's impacted my life. How am I going to behave? How are the decisions that I'm making right now going to impact the choices that my daughters make and the kind of people that they become one day?
Right.
In professional decisions, in how much time I spend with them, in how I treat their mother, in all that stuff. How are the things that are important in my life going to impact the two of them, because they've got a front row seat for how you're supposed to live your life, and they're only going to learn from two people for the next 10, 15 years. So I think that's how it's impacted me, my personality, and how I approach life.
Okay, so you guys have probably the coolest go-kart track I've ever been to, and you let people run in the rain.
Yeah.
Has anybody been injured yet?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why you signed the waiver.
That's why he signed the waiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing terrible. I mean, we've flipped a couple of the rental carts. We had a guy come do an enduro, a young guy who had a pacemaker, whose pacemaker stopped working across start-finish line.
God.
And he went unconscious and basically passed out with his foot wide open.
Right.
Drove straight off turn 1, under the fence,
Turn
and
one-
up the hill.
Turn 1 is
wow.
almost flat.
It's almost
right
flat,
hand
yeah.
kink dogleg
Yeah.
thing. It's badass.
Yeah.
You
That
don't
was
want to go
bad.
off.
Called the helicopter, but he refused treatment.
Oh, good.
And,
Good.
Wait, how'd you get him started again?
Huh?
Like, how'd you change the battery?
It has like it's like got a self defib thing on it. Like if
Okay.
it can't, it's got a self. These things have like if they stop, it's got a defibrillator in it. Like it charges it. I don't know how the hell it works, but the guy
Clear.
they told me, but I'm not there. Yeah, I'm not there. I'm at my house, and like the call I get is just like Twilight Zone surreal. It's like,
God.
hey, a guy with a pacemaker, like the pacemaker blew up and he passed out and he went off the property and into the woods, and I'm like, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Like, ridiculous.
So he's dead. Okay, what else?
But I know, but everybody's fine. Everybody's fine.
Okay, who has been the biggest problem to come through there that's a pro? Where you're like, hey.
Bubba Wallace.
Bubba Wallace,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
I raced with him there in the
Yeah.
rain, and it was ugly.
Yeah. Not any. Yeah, Bubba Wallace. Yeah. And I like Daryl.
Yeah,
I
he's a
do.
good kid.
And we're buddies.
He's a
we're
good
friends.
kid. But he wrecked
there's,
some
yeah,
shit.
there's time. I mean, honestly, when we first opened, a lot of the young guys came out and were like, "Oh, a new go-kart track," and
Yeah.
they kind of treat it like when you go to a go-kart track in a town that you're racing and you don't care. You go like disobey all the rules and you have a good time. You get kicked out. It's a fun story. You don't care because you never go back again.
Yeah.
Well, they all kind of came to the Motorplex
Like that.
initially that way.
Yeah.
And I really quickly was like, that's not what we're doing here, guys. If you want to go do that, go to the indoor place in Charlotte. Go like somewhere else. But like,
Right.
and so then they were all fine after that. But
It's amazing how stories like this can get out, and yet no one has ever talked about how Johnny O'Connell tried to murder Dario Frank.
But you know that story.
no,
Okay, so NASCAR fans, I have weird fan stories, and I'm nobody, and you're nobody too, but you're nobody that gets to race a lot of cool shit. So there's fans that come up because you're wearing a driver's suit. Any weird NASCAR fan stories? You're somebody to me. Any weird, like I had a guy follow me in the bathroom once at Watkins Glen and stand in between two urinals where there wasn't a divider, and like asked me for a picture. And it wasn't Rami.
I was gonna say that.
Wait till you hear.
Oh,
I saw you talking about there was a slumber party or something like that.
Wait, what?
wait.
Set,
Well, we do,
time
have,
out.
we do have a video.
Hang
idea.
on. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. He asked to stay in my apartment.
Yeah.
You saw it
Yeah.
on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Wait. Listen to Ed Carpenter's episode when it comes out.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You'll
It'll be
understand.
out now, by the
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
listeners. I'm an
Okay.
idiot.
And we have an
But-
investment idea for you.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. Craziest NASCAR fan experience.
So we're at Darlington, and I'm at a truck racing autograph session, and so we're like in the deep south, and it's rural South Carolina, and I'm driving a Toyota.
And you're from, you were born in St. Louis? Is that
Oh,
right?
this was what you mean. I was born in St. Louis, yeah.
But then you moved out to California.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were raised in California. Right?
I was raised in California.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So we're in Darlington, South Carolina, doing an autograph session. It's a lot of good old boys, right?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
flag waving, a lot of Trump votes. And so we're doing this. So we're doing this autograph session, and this guy comes up, and he's like 75 years old, and no shit, he's in overalls, like the overalls with no t-shirt, like no shirt underneath him,
Yeah.
like straw in his mouth, the whole kind of
Wow.
thing.
Right.
And comes
Just
up
a
and
Straight out of
walking
a Bugs
cliche.
Bunny
He
cartoon,
goes,
Yeah.
You
Joe
drive.
NASCAR.
He goes, you drive Toyota, and I was like, yes. Let me tell you something about Toyota, and I'm like, God, here we go, here we have
Yeah.
it. He's like, everybody in my town went to go work for a car company, and it was Toyota. And everybody wanted to work for Ford, and they wouldn't hire them. And everybody wanted to work for Chevy, and they wouldn't hire them. But Toyota hired everybody and gave everybody in my town a job. And for that, I am fiercely loyal to Toyota for the rest of my life. And I was like completely. That was like the
Not what you
180.
saw
Like
coming.
talking
Yeah.
about curb qualifying somebody and having it be completely the wrong way.
right.
And he was like, "God bless you, man. Go Toyota." And like kept on like rebel flag, patch, like the whole
Right.
deal. And I'm like, wow, that's
Okay.
yeah.
There's
Nice.
Yeah, that was really. I remember just being stunned.
Right.
Yeah,
And maybe it
absolutely.
just says something bad about me. I don't know, or something great about Toyota. But I don't know. I just
I know you appreciate what we're doing on this podcast. Who do you think we need to interview? Like, who is the guy that you're like, you have to talk to this guy? I want to hear his episode.
so if there was because if there was any way to get this guy, and it would be really hard to do it, but by far the most amazing person I've ever spent time with in racing as my teammate, stories, personality, everything, Hans Stuck.
We can get Hunch stuff.
Can you get Hans Stuck?
My
We
dad
can
was
do
his
it.
crew chief in IMSA.
Okay,
Yeah.
this guy, dude, you need to ask him about Monaco at James Hunt. You need to ask him about Le Mans in the 80s with Derek Bell. You need to
Yeah.
ask him about trimming the wing out on the Mulsanne to get the free steak dinner at the steakhouse on the back of the track.
For top speed or
Dude,
whatever.
yeah, I'm telling you, this guy, unbelievable.
That is actually a good idea.
have all
The only
that.
He would be
downside is
unreal.
that he's based in Europe.
He lives in Switzerland
Well,
or
yeah,
Austria.
I think, well, if Continental wants to pay for dinner
Well,
with
dinner with European
dinner
racers.
with Racers Europe,
Yeah, which is season
season 4.
Yeah.
Three.
He would be
season
pretty
3.
amazing.
He would be great. Yeah. Okay.
You know, Bill Auberlin's got some really great stories. Like Bill Auberlin's stories about running that RX-7 with his old man back in
Yeah.
the late 80s, early 90s.
right.
Yeah.
You know, he's got great stories. He's got great stories about a motor blowing up at Long Beach or something like that, and they flew a bunch of parts in and rebuilt the motor in the hotel room the night before the race.
Right.
And another guest in the hotel room looked out their window and saw them building it through the window and thought they were putting a bomb together and called the police, and like SWAT showed up and like arrested him and the whole kind of
That's
thing
awesome.
to find out, and then found out it was a motor.
Give me a day in the life of Justin Marks. Tomorrow's Monday morning.
Yeah, so
What do you do?
I will work out. I spend a lot of time working out these
Okay.
days.
Yeah. All right.
So
Now give me the real answer.
tomorrow's ab day, and then I'm just gonna do tries for 7 hours.
Just gonna be just dips, bro.
Yeah.
Just getting dips in.
So I'll work out, and then I will go to the track. My
Yeah,
office
the
is
go-kart
at
track.
the Motorplex.
Yeah.
My office is at the Motorplex. You know, these days Larson-Marks is in town. There's only a couple races left, so when those guys
Yeah.
are in town, because usually they're gone for like 3 months at a time, but they're sort of back in between races now. So I'll run through there and just go over how the race went with them. We're just starting to kind of figure out 2017, so we're working on planning stuff with them as far as motor builders and some just logistics around the
Right.
schedule and things like that. Operational model stuff, and then I'll spend time at the track just getting caught up on communications, just emails and stuff with some projects that I've got going on. And then, I mean, that's really my base of operations is Motorplex. I mean, like, no 2 days are alike. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll go to Ganassi. I mean, now that I only have one race left in the Xfinity car,
Where?
which is at Phoenix in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So I'm going to the shop less than I was this summer when I was
Sure.
kind of hot and heavy. I've got 2 more days at the simulator at Pratt & Miller, which is all day stuff.
Right.
So I'll do that. You know, and then just try to spend some time with my kids and just you know, it's just working on what my racing's gonna look like next year.
Yeah.
That was my next question. Like,
Manor.
what-
And I figure I can do Monaco for $50,000, and then so next year I am not going to race nearly as much NASCAR stuff as I did this year. I'm
Okay.
going to run. The program I'm working on right now is to try to go defend my win at Mid Ohio in the Xfinity car. Maybe Road America. I don't know. I'm going to race at Phoenix because this construction company our family's
Okay.
doing it sponsors the car. Their offices are in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Their manufacturing facilities in Phoenix. There's a lot of guests that can come.
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
do it as a company thing,
Sure.
right?
Yep, sure.
And you know what I really want to do? And I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, and the competition's not strong, and it would more be like going and like driving a cool car and having some fun
Yeah.
and taking my family. And I've got a meeting about this tomorrow. I want to build a badass double throwdown Trans Am 1 car
Okay.
and go race Trans Am.
I like it.
I mean, it's
Can I spot?
it's just I mean it's
Can I
the,
spot for
so
you?
like the, you know, in TA1 there's I don't think the field's that deep.
No, it's not. It's not. You're gonna win by a
But
lot.
I think that the car is awesome.
Those guys
And,
do like 208
yeah,
at Daytona.
so they're like 9 seconds a lap faster than the Xfinity cars at Road America.
Yeah, right.
And they look like a really. I mean, I actually think it'd be more fun to build the car than to be to drive
Yeah,
it. Like
yeah,
so, I
yeah,
mean, so I think we're gonna try to build one of those cars. And I
Yeah.
don't know if I'll do every race, but I mean, it's
Can I do
I
the
think
one
we-
you don't do?
What-
I just
yeah.
want to drive a Trans
yeah,
Am car.
I
I've
think
never
it would
driven
be.
a Trans
Yeah,
Am
I mean,
car.
really do one right.
Yeah.
Right. Like get our ECR Hendrick to build the engine and like
stop it.
have
Stop it.
I got a NASCAR team here in town that's gonna basically. When is this gonna air?
November 18th.
They want to buy a used car, tear it down, beat blast it, paint, like start over and build it as
Yeah.
like a proper race
Why do
car.
I think we're going to end up having a Season 3 special
Look,
just about
this
your
is- yeah,
goddamn
well,
TA1
okay.
car?
The $2 million
It's
TA1
not,
car.
No, it's not going to be that. I'm going to try to. I want to try to build. Honestly, I think that I can build a car that's the best car that's been in that series for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
For half the price that these guys are buying those cars for right now.
What's the budget for is it World of Outlaws that Larson-Marks runs?
Yeah. So.
What's the year?
Really, to do it right, it's $500,000, which is actually kind of amazing if you consider the fact that there's 92 races on the
Yeah,
schedule.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Now
incredible.
Yeah.
That's $500,000 in cost, or half once you include cash flow.
That's what it takes to run my company from January 1st to December 31st
Not
if we
thinking
don't
about
blow a
prize
motor
money.
up or destroy a race car.
Excluding prize money.
That's cost.
Okay.
That's cost.
Right.
So what can you win?
Well, it pays $150,000 to win the Knoxville Nationals. Every Saturday night World of Outlaw show pays $10,000 to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most midweek ones will, like Friday ones and midweek ones will pay $6,000 at least.
Right.
I pay my driver half, and I tip the guys out if we win.
Yeah.
So you legitimately can keep us in the black-ish.
So like Donnie Schatz, who races for
Yeah,
Tony
Schatz,
Stewart
Schatz,
Racing, yeah. So he wins 30 races a year and
Right.
most of the Knoxville Nationals. So so Tony can basically, and I'm sort of assuming, can basically cover the expenses of his race team on prize money,
right?
and he has sponsorship.
Right.
You know, $500,000. I mean, that's everything, right? So that's like what it costs to race, what workers' comp,
Yeah.
rent at the shop. I mean, that's
Right.
everything. It's what it costs to run the business. for the year.
$500,000, 92 races a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got 3 full-time guys.
Cool. All right. I just
Yeah.
need to know what I need to race.
Dude, I've not driven one of those cars
Why
yet.
have you not driven like all of your shit?
Yeah, I don't. That thing almost scares me. I'll be honest with
Yeah.
you. That thing is like if you sit in one of those cars,
Yeah,
you
God,
just sit in
it's
it
so
and like and
uncomfortable.
look around,
Yeah.
and look at how exposed you are, and look
Right.
where the tires are,
Yeah.
and that you're just straddling the drive shaft.
Yeah.
And the thing's got like freaking 900 horsepower,
Right,
yeah,
and
right.
they're going 152 miles an hour to half-mile dirt track. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane. It
Yeah.
is
In like,
super
podunk nowhere.
super impressive racing.
All right.
Continental's got the check.
Yeah.
Was that okay? I felt we didn't do a lot of laughing, but I felt like there was some good philosophical content on that one.
The reality is that laughing is fine and it's
Yeah.
good, but most people don't actually expand on how to fix the sport.
Yeah.
The best thing about your episode so far, just listen to it now, was like not just an opinion, but a well thought out and explained opinion versus like the marketing idea behind IndyCar. We need more marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
You know, you literally broke it down. So
Well, hopefully it's thought provoking, and I mean I'm not the first one to say that I've got any answers, that I've got the right answers, I should say, for the sport. I know it's a complex problem, and I know that new technologies and new demands from the American consumer need to be really intelligently
Right.
taken into account
Right.
when people think about it. So you can agree with some of the stuff I say or disagree, but if it at least gets people thinking,
yeah.
then it's served a purpose.
I'm finished.
Wow, that was such a great episode. That guest really knew how to tell a story.
Did you like that, Justin Marks, Ryan? Good. I'm glad you did. And thanks again. I'm not even going to bother saying it.
You're welcome, Sean. I'm right here.
All right. Thank you to Justin Marks for hooking up with us when we were out in Charlotte. And, I've known Justin now for almost 8 years, and he's truly one of the smartest guys, as you heard, in the paddock. And it's funny. I think he came in hoping to sort of tell funny stories and show that side of him, because it absolutely exists. And it's kind of funny to me how the episode ended up becoming probably one of the smarter, more philosophical ones of the whole series. But that's because he's got that much range and he's that diverse of a guy in terms of his thoughts and thinking process and that sort of thing. Funny, smart, super insightful, and just a really good guy to spend time with. So, all right, we're going to get out of here. We are going to return to a paddock mechanic by the name of Kyle Leo. Kyle is a member of a band called The Suspect. They have a bunch of stuff available on SoundCloud. Here's one of those songs called Should Have Loved You.